Today's guest is Jill, and she's proof that reinvention doesn't need permission. After more than 25 years working with agencies, she's made a fast, intentional pivot into building Nice One. This episode is packed with honesty about pressure, identity, and choosing what success means for you. After years of leadership in agency world, you've decided to step down and start your solopreneur journey. What was the driving force behind that decision?
I think there were a couple of driving forces. In June of this year, I had my 25 years in the business anniversary. So I started in June of 2000 at BBDO in New Zealand, a big sort of multinational agency. I think those milestone years sort of give you time to reflect. And there's sort of those moments where you take a look at your life and see how it's all turning out. I'm also going to be 50 next year. So I was sort of approaching that other milestone. And I don't think I'd really taken a long, hard look at my life for a little while. And I was lucky enough to go away for a whole month in April of this year and traveled back to New Zealand. I spent time with family and then a lot of friends that I went to university with who were at the same sort of life stage. And I think it was a really nice opportunity just to see how other people's lives were sort of playing out and what made them happy. And then just to really have that time away from the business and to really think about, was I happy and what makes me happy? So it was that sort of that timing of the April trip, the upcoming June anniversary, which is now come and gone, and then my 50th birthday, which is next April, sort of all culminated in this kind of, this decision point, which was really, really interesting.
Do you think the timing of that trip, was this like a question you were asking yourself before you went on this trip and it just so happened to kind of coincide with the timing? Or was it spurred by this trip and seeing these friends and that sort of thing?
It was a little bit spurred by the trip. I think leading up to the trip, there was a lot going on at work. We'd just won a new client. We were sort of onboarding that new client and making sure that was going smoothly. And that was a client I was leading. I sort of questioned whether I should even be going away on the trip. It was almost 4 weeks away, a couple of weeks with EO and then a couple of weeks of holiday. And I think everything was pretty frantic. And by the time I left and got out of Canada and on my way, I was feeling pretty frazzled. And I think that impetus of sort of being in that, heightened state of anxiety and then going straight from that into time away was really interesting and really sort of, it was a moment of, this isn't good for me. I'm not my best self at the moment. I think it always happens when you go away for a long time. You work so hard so that you can go away. And then by the time you go away, you're in this kind of completely wired state. So it was, I think that mental state really triggered something in me.
Yeah. Do you feel like the decision-making happened quite quickly once you started asking yourself that question? Or was it, because everybody has their own opinion of how fast things happen and that sort of thing?
Probably too quickly, especially if you ask my husband. I think I'm really impulsive by nature. I'm sort of not impulsive and then very impulsive. It's weird. I'll sort of drift along for a long time and then I'll make a snap decision and pivot really quickly. And I don't think that's necessarily the best advice to follow. But I think after that April trip, I came back in May and I was ready to make a move. And then I was out of the business by the end of July. So that was pretty fast. So 2 months of sort of, organizing and going through logistics and really kind of cutting ties, which I think was pretty quick. I think a lot of people will think about something and then, work out terms of a deal and things like that, work out an exit and take a little bit longer. I think doing it in 2 months is a testament to, I think, my business partner, my ex-business partner, Steph, and how amazing she was about the whole process. And just that idea of when you're done, you're kind of done. And you don't want to bring a negative energy into the business. So I actually wanted to remove myself as quickly as I could. Yeah.
I find that really interesting because a lot of people know or talk about this idea that making things happen faster is obviously better for everybody because you don't want to drag something out, especially if, it goes for like terminating an employee as well, catch it as soon as possible because it's better for both parties. But I don't think people practice that as much as they talk about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's really disruptive for the staff as well. Once I'd made my decision, we didn't really let anyone know. So Steph and I knew while we were starting to sort out, the terms of an exit, which is never an easy thing to do. So we didn't really want to disrupt the team, but I kind of knew, and I felt it's hard to sort of show up authentically when you know that you're not going to be there in a couple of months. So it was a tough time. And I think any longer than that would have been, really psychologically tough for me. So I think I was so lucky that she was gracious enough to say, we can get this done quickly. And I worked right up till my last day, was working, till 6 o'clock on my last day, had a really lovely handover period. We told people at work, I think about 2.5 weeks before I left. So it was relatively quickly. So we had about 6 weeks of Steph and I knowing and other people not knowing, slowly let kind of senior leadership know. But by the time we told everyone, it was like, I'm leaving and I'm leaving quite quickly. And that felt really good and decisive and kind of the kindest thing to do for everybody, not to kind of drag out a situation.
Yeah. I'm sure, hard decision, obviously, but obviously the right one, which we'll get into. So,
yeah.
I'm curious about that. So that 2-month period that you were kind of transitioning out, there's obviously all these things when you're playing these scenarios through your head and, you and Steph planning for them and that sort of thing. But there's obviously things that you can't plan for as well. What were some of the surprises that came up during that period that, you couldn't have planned for?
As I transitioned out, I started to really question my own identity and what makes up my identity. And I think I've always known that work is a really big part of who I am. It's always been really important to me. And I sort of made this relatively snap decision of, I'm going to leave. This isn't the right thing for me anymore. And I'm making this decision and I'm being really intentional. And then over those next 2 months, it was like, there was a lot of questioning of what am I going to be? Who am I? What is my identity? What's going to replace this? And what am I actually even going to do with my days? Like you go from, pretty much a 9 to 5, we're an office business at Daughter, to I'm going to be at home and I'm not going to have an office. And where am I going to put my computer? I actually didn't have a computer. I left my computer at work. So I had to buy a computer. So those little things of the day to day, but those bigger questions of, this has been my identity for such a long time, and taking a large part of your life away like that, like what does that leave you with? And what are you going to fill that gap with? And I don't think I had spent a lot of time really thinking about how important that was to me. Yeah.
That's such an interesting thought. I think probably more people than care to admit don't really understand that work is their identity.
Yeah.
Right? And you get caught. Maybe it's a good thing for you. Who knows? I'm not here to judge. But what happens when you are separated from that? Because that's it. Yeah. I mean, you basically what was that rediscovery process for you? I suppose.
Well, I think I was really lucky to be part of EO at the time. EO, Entrepreneurs Organization in Calgary. I was part of a forum of people where I was going through this with them. So in April, when I was away in New Zealand, we didn't have a forum meeting, but then I came back from that and went straight on a major retreat with my EO forum. So I had a week with them in Denver where I basically was saying, look, I think I've had this, I think I'm going to leave my business. I think I'm going to exit. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they were amazing to just sort of talk to me about whether that was the right decision, sharing experiences of when they had been in that position and hadn't taken that leap. And I think we had a couple of EO meetings after that major retreat as well. And I was really able to just kind of explore that sort of whole self thing. Like, am I going to be okay? Am I still enough if I don't have this as part of my life? So I think it was really nice to have that, not objective because they know me really well. So there's not as much objectivity, but just a group of people coming at it from a really different lens, because you have your work that you're leaving behind. You have your family who is sort of going, what the hell are you doing? Kind of blowing up your life. And then this group of business people who are like, I get it. Like, I get how tough this is. And I get why you would make this decision. It was really kind of validating. It was a nice process. I'm so grateful to them for just supporting me through that as well.
The importance of having great people around you, right?
Yeah.
People that get it.
Yeah, and they all came to Daughter, threw me a lovely leaving party at Bar Roca in Maraloop, which was amazing. And my whole forum came along, and it was really nice to have them there, and to a couple of people who used to be in my forum who aren't anymore came along as well. And just having those two sides of my world along with my husband, and it was great. It was like, it was almost a like an affirmation that you're not just your work, you're these other people who like you for more than just your job. And there's all these different kind of facets to your personality. And it was really helpful. It was psychologically helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that, like, you know, when through this discovery process, through this change, that, you know, you find you find that your self-worth internally has been associated so heavily to the work that you're doing.
Yes.
Was that the case for you?
Very much so. I'm the first person in my family to go to university. First person to have sort of what I'd call a career. My mother was a teacher, but a substitute teacher for a long time, and then an office manager, but she grew up as a solo parent. My sister was on a farm, so married a farmer. So that sort of corporate job, you know, spending so much time dedicated to that was really unusual for them. So I think it was really nice to understand that while that had been part of my life, it wasn't necessarily the only part of my life. And I'd put a lot of my self-worth and my identity into that bucket. And maybe that wasn't the healthiest thing. So pulling that away kind of forced me to re-examine everything else and say, well, what else you got?
Yeah. What have you found? What have you found? Like, you know, I don't know. Do you feel like you have extra time now, or do you think you've put it into other things that you're just...
Okay, August, no. And I sort of made a deal with myself. I left on July the 31st, and it was like, August, I'm going to try not to do too much, which is really hard because I had people from the business community saying, this is the time to capitalize on any sort of equity that you have in the business community. Like when the news is released, everybody sort of comes out and is surprised and wants to catch up and wants to have a coffee. So it was hard to sort of say, I want to catch up, but I want to protect my time until September. So September is a lot of like catching up with people in that community. Throughout August, I really wanted to kind of focus on my family. The kids were on holidays. My kids are 12 and 10. So spending time with them, really kind of getting away, going on a family vacation. The kids went to camp for 10 days and I completely redecorated our house, which I think was a lot of like nervous energy that needed to funnel into something productive. So not funneling that into business. I stayed fairly true to that, but I needed something to channel that energy into. So I did a lot of painting and reorganizing of furniture.
Beautiful.
Which I think was great and was really, I still felt busy and I think I was worried that I was going to feel a bit lost and at a loose end. And that hasn't happened yet.
You mentioned that you were the first person in your family to go to university. So I'd like to kind of dive into the past a little bit. And obviously, you spent so much time in agency world. So tell me a bit about your upbringing. Did you ever plan on, was agency kind of like the direction that you wanted to go? What was that look like?
No, I totally fell into that world. I grew up in New Zealand and went to school in Hawke's Bay. And then I went to university in Wellington at a place called Victoria University. And I started off doing a law degree and always thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I really liked English, was sort of quite good at debating and things like that. And then I think at the end of my first year of university, I decided that the people in law school were not really my people and really fit in very well. It was a fairly argumentative, sort of opinionated, very confident group of people. And I was a little more reserved. I had done a thing called classics at university in my first year, which was Greek mythology, Greek history, Roman history. Really, really loved that. Dropped out of law school to pursue classics as my major, which my mother was fairly devastated about. First person going to university and she was like, my daughter's going to be a lawyer. And suddenly it's like, my daughter's doing a degree in classics. What even is that? And I was rowing at university at the time, and I was rowing with somebody who worked at an advertising agency. And as I sort of got further through my degree, I learned a little bit more about what she did. She was a graphic designer, and she mentioned that she thought I'd be a really good account services person at an agency, and got me an introduction to her boss. And her boss was the managing director at a place called BBDO. BBDO is a multinational agency. They had about 100 people at the agency in Wellington. And he had done a degree in classics, which was really interesting. So I went in for an interview with him. We started talking about this idea of, doing what you love and kind of trusting that the world will just work out. And we just got on really well. And he was like, I think you'd be great at this, and gave me a very, very, very entry-level job at an agency, which I loved straight away. To be surrounded by people who are really creative and to help sort of organize that creativity, to put some structure around the chaos, felt really validating. It was something, I wasn't creative myself, but I liked being part of the process. And I liked that idea of getting people the tools they need, or the space they need, or the money they need to like do a really good job, and seeing those ideas kind of really come to life. It was just so rewarding. Yeah, it was great. So I loved it. So that was June of 2000 that I started at BBDO, and I spent 10 years there and loved it. Loved it until I really didn't love it.
Fair.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, the advice that he gave you, that conversation that you bonded over, is kind of full circle, right?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was like, do what you love, make sure you're happy, like be intentional about your happiness. I think it can be very easy to go, this is practical and logical, and I see a path and this makes sense and I could do this. And I think I could have been a lawyer, and I think I would have been an okay lawyer, but I don't know if that ever would have made me very happy. And I think I would have really like doubled down on that, like, this is my self-worth and that sort of career profession. Advertising gave me the ability to sort of be around people who are very different from myself, like people who have a really different process. And I think it's great to see, you know, what makes people happy in different parts of a job. I will always value that conversation with him. He's an amazing person, just one of the most creative people that I've ever met, but on that sort of management side. He was a really great leader.
Are you still in touch with him by chance?
No, but he's still doing things in New Zealand. I think he's the chairman of the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra now. So he stayed in the creative realm. Really interesting guy. One of those people that he could go to a party or a networking event and he would just remember everybody's names and would remember, you know, what their family was doing and what sports their kids played, and just was so good with people. He made people feel really like valued and was able to really connect at lots of different levels. Really taught me a lot about just curiosity and really listening when people tell you their story.
It sounds like those are all values and you know, I mean, I suppose values that are super important in agency world, right? It's like people, we were talking about this off camera before, but making people feel seen and heard.
Yeah, completely. And I think one of my core values is curiosity. And I think I'm a really curious person, and I love nothing more than like talking to people about their story. Like, how did you get into this? And what makes you happy? And are you happy? And I love I don't love answering questions as much. I can like talk forever, but I love that idea of introducing really interesting people and just seeing what their stories are like and where they cross over. And everyone has such different paths. And I used to think like what made me happy made everyone happy. And that is not the case at all. It's like people are happy for such different reasons. And at different times of their lives, that changes as well. Like it used to be being incredibly busy, being incredibly important from a sort of logistical point of view was so validating for me. Like I needed to be needed. And I think that's that as I get older, I'm more self-aware of that sometimes not being the best thing in the world. Like you shouldn't need to be as needed. Systems should be set up so that things carry on if you get hit by a bus. And it's a little bit sort of self-centered.
Was there a defining moment that you realized that was the case for you?
So at Daughter, my role, and in agency life in general, my role was an account service person. So I was the conduit between sort of the client and the agency. My last kind of year and a half at Daughter, I really moved into business development, so the new business side. So I was less involved in the day-to-day. I still had a couple of clients, but I was less involved in the day-to-day. So 25%, I would say, of my job was day-to-day client service, and then 75% was business development. And I think when you take yourself out of that like day-to-day, I'm so important, like this literally can't happen without me, you realize, oh, no, I'm less important, like on a sort of an urgent basis. Like new business is incredibly important for the long-term health of the business, but on a day-to-day basis, if you don't show up, you know, nothing falls over. So you're out there cultivating leads, going through pitch processes, writing RFPs, but there's nothing that's like vitally as sort of fast-paced and urgent. I think that was a really good chance for me to look at what I valued about myself and what was valuable to the business as well. And that helped me sort of get some distance, I think, from just being down in the weeds and being like, I literally can't go on holiday because I'm so important. It's like, well, you're actually not.
Yeah.
Yeah, things will be okay.
That's a bit of a driving force, though. I imagine that's why that feeling is probably why you succeeded so well in your role, right?
Yeah. And I think I really put so much of myself into that role. I thought about work all the time. Like, even before I was a partner and an owner at Daughter, when I was at BBDO, when I was at other agencies, I never stopped thinking about work. Like, I would go to sleep thinking about work. I would wake up in the middle of the night and write down things that I hadn't done or ideas. I would think about it on the weekends. I maybe acted like an owner even when I wasn't, but I didn't act like maybe the most strategic owner. I acted like an owner who was vital to the business. And I don't think that's, the healthiest way to be. I think being an account service person, you are often, everything does feel urgent and important, and it's you can sort of get a bit caught up in that. So being able to be a bit more self-aware and take a step back and go, maybe if I'm that important, maybe the process isn't very good, because no one person should be, that vital or feel like they're that vital.
There's a healthy side to that and there's an unhealthy side, right? Everything's kind of a spectrum, right? And I think, there's an element to that where it's like, wow, you obviously want the best for your clients, you want the best for your team, whatever the case, yourself, etc. And then there's a part where it's like, okay, that's an obsession that's driving you too far. What have you learned about that spectrum and like how you plan on using those learnings going forward?
I think having some perspective and some balance, which I think I was very guilty of not protecting in my life. I think it's really good to love your job. And I always did it out of, love for the job, love for the people that I was working with. I wanted things to succeed. I wanted to do the best work that I could. And that's a healthy thing. But letting other people have their turn as well. And I think I learned that at Daughter to some extent. I was aware of it. I didn't practice it as much as I should. We had a business coach for a while at Daughter who was amazing, who basically said, when you solve all the problems, you're denying other people the satisfaction of solving problems. It's like solving problems is actually awesome. And you're kind of hogging that for yourself because you like to be at the center of things. And I always thought of myself as being quite a generous person. And he was like, you're actually being really selfish. By being helpful, you're kind of denying people that psychological satisfaction of figuring something out, failing, learning, doing it on their own, because you're sort of protecting them too much. And I thought that was really interesting. I was like, but I'm helpful. And he's like, no, you're doing that because you want that little adrenaline rush of solving a problem. And you're not letting other people kind of learn to do that themselves. So I think it's, now that I'm working more with freelancers and working with more consultants, I think recognizing that they're really good at their job and that they can solve problems, and I don't need to go in with a solution. I can go in with some options and some ideas, but letting them bring their expertise to the table. I think it's letting people step up and play an equal role and not trying to like dominate.
Fascinating thought. I've never heard anybody explain it that way, that it's selfish to solve problems because other people need the satisfaction of solving problems.
And when I thought about it, I was like, oh, you're right. I get such a kick out of solving a problem or being, the hero in a situation. That is something that I crave and I find very validating. And I bet it's something other people would really enjoy as well. And it's terrifying until you realize that you could do it. And then it's like, oh, I'm good at solving problems.
Oh, I'm going to be second guessing all the problems I'm solving now.
I know. Let someone else solve them.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
It's hard to let go.
You said in there that you loved BBDO until you didn't. And it was, that was a very kind of, I imagine, defining moment. What was it that you came to didn't love or came to didn't like?
I think it was that obsession, like what would bring me joy, what would sort of validate me as a person. I think I'm trying to cultivate some different hobbies. For a long time, I was sort of really proud of saying, I'm not the primary caregiver of my children. My husband does that because he's organized his life in such a way that his hours are more flexible and he's able to do all the stuff for the kids. And I almost sort of touted that out like a badge of honor, like, oh, I don't even have to like do school pickups. And now I kind of want to do school pickups. Like I want to be more involved in the kids' lives. I read this thing about kids. My kids are 12 and 10. You only get like 5 or 6 more summers with them and then they're gone and that's it. So it's like, I want to make the most of that. So I think really understanding that is important and worthwhile as well, that it's not just about your career. It's about all the people around you and that sort of that wheel of family, career and your personal life and making sure that it's spinning in balance and that it's not like out of alignment, all career.
And I think that changes over time too, right? Like what that alignment or that balance looks like in that wheel is always ever changing realistically. But I think the ability to identify, and it sounds like you've done that twice, at least that we've discussed, probably more, and that to realign that when it gets too lopsided or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I think EO as well was really helpful for that. I think EO really taught me about your career is less important than you kind of think it is. Like, it's a really important part of your life, and it's you can feel a lot of like self-worth from like giving back. And at Daughter, we worked on a lot of projects that I was like, you're not curing cancer. It's like, yeah, but we're working on like the cancer center, helping raise money for it. It's like, we're not just like selling widgets. Like, we were doing some really work that felt really important and worthwhile and really kind of community based. But I think understanding that that's just one part of your life and just having people remind you of that. In advertising, I hung out with a lot of people who were in advertising and branding and design, and it felt very important all the time. And when you take a step back, it's like, oh yeah, it is just branding. It's not, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I love that perspective. It's almost like a bit of a surrendering, right? It's like, obviously the work everybody is doing is important to some sort of level or capacity or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, we say this around the office, the same thing you just said. We're not curing cancer, we're making videos. We might be making videos about curing cancer, but it's not that important, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing to do, because it's almost sort of taking what's really important to you and acknowledging that it's, less important than you think it is in the broader scheme of things. So I think it takes a bit of a step back to be able to do that. And EO really helped me sort of think about that and what were my qualities that made me good at my job, and what else could I use those qualities to be good at in my life, not just funneling it all into work all the time.
EO has come up a couple times, and obviously realistically, EO is a community, right? It's for whether you love the word or hate the word, it's a community.
Yeah.
What is it about EO, maybe in particular, that you love? Like, is it the people? Is it the structure? Is it obviously probably a little bit of both? But how do people find that community in their lives, and whatever that looks like?
Yeah.
And what should it look like? What should it feel like?
I think it's accountability was really big for me. You tend to sort of cultivate friends who are quite similar to yourself, and often friends who, if you've had a bad day, they'll just say, oh, God, I'm sorry, I'm sorry you had a bad day. But they won't say, well, how are you going to make sure you don't have a bad day tomorrow? So they're there for you in the moment, and they're there to emotionally support you, but they're not there to solve your problems, or they're not there to shine that flashlight on you and say, you've said this every time I've seen you, what's going on in your life? What are those bigger decisions? And I think the structure of EO, the way that a forum meeting works, the way that you are held accountable, when you say something and your forum group says, you've said that for the last 5 meetings, what are you going to do about it? It's time to, put your money where your mouth is. Otherwise, we're not going to validate this kind of whining anymore. It's that sort of identify and then, solve it. And I think that application of a structure to something that you can just get really like self-involved with. You can spin your own wheels and say, oh, woe is me, my life sucks and I'm so busy. And it's like, well, you have choices every day. Everything you do is a choice, and you're obviously making bad choices. It's kind of nice to have people tell you that. It's rare to get that real honesty and accountability. So that for me was really good. It's like, this is on you. It's yours. You're the only person who can change this, and you're not changing it. So if you're not going to change it, you need to stop whining about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or at least be aware, that this is up to you. I love that idea, extreme ownership, and just owning up to kind of taking control realistically.
Taking control, being intentional. And I think so often life gets so busy, and you're busy in the everyday, that you don't stop to say, what am I doing? Like, am I on the right track? What are my 5-year goals? Those sorts of things. I don't know. I've never been like a New Year's resolution person or anything like that. So that idea of, I've probably got 5 more years in the industry. What do I want them to look like? Like, I want to retire by the time I'm around 55 if I can. We're working towards that. But it's like, okay, coming up to 50, what are those 5 years going to feel like? I want them to be on my terms. It shouldn't take that long. I would encourage more people to do that, to take stock and sort of write it down and have somebody hold you accountable. It's, a worthwhile exercise to just make sure that you're making choices, that you're not just kind of drifting along.
Is there a good structure? Like, obviously having the right people around you is important to kind of make sure that you're checking in with that and asking yourself the right questions. But is there a structure that you've found that works for you to ensure that you are aligned with your goals and where you want to be?
I think it is. My husband is great. He's very rational. He's a very good decision maker. He's very good at sort of pros and cons. Let's look at this logically. There are lots of scenarios. We can make anything work. Whereas I was like, the only option I have is to keep doing this. Like, this is the only thing I can see. I was very blinkered. So I think having somebody who makes decisions in a different way from yourself to show you a different process. EO was a little bit like that, but EO is not about giving you advice. It's about sharing experiences. Whereas my husband, like, we really sat down and he was like, okay, you could stay at Daughter and be an owner and take a step right back. You could stay at Daughter and keep doing what you're doing. You could leave entirely. You could do this other thing. And we sort of went through every scenario. And I think I was always nervous that I was going to be a financial burden and I wasn't going to be pulling my weight. And he's like, you've done this for 25 years. You know, the weight has been well and truly pulled. You're allowed to like take a step back. We can make that work. Like, we can budget and we can figure that out so that you can do something that, is meaningful and makes you happy. So I think that was really helpful. I think I felt stuck, but I didn't have that outside perspective to say, you're not stuck. There's lots of ways. We now have a grocery budget. And I have a whole spreadsheet of costs and things. And I'm just more conscious of finances, which is you take a step back and you make it work. And it's, you just tighten the belts a little bit and that's okay.
Yeah. Having that support from a community perspective and like from your husband obviously is integral. Like, I imagine it'd be a lot harder to make a decision when it's, you don't have that support, obviously. Right?
Completely. And I think I could have gone to friends for that as well. I think it was my husband sort of sees the good and the bad side of it and is a little bit able to sort of step back and say, this is where I see you the most happy. So I think focusing on your own, like what makes you happy as well. It's rare to sort of ask yourself that. It's like, I feel a sense of achievement from like being in this really high anxiety situation and figuring it out. But is that happiness or is that just, I got close to the edge and I was able to pull it back and I feel validated? But, when am I my most happy? Am I most kind of myself the most? I think when I was on holiday, that was a really nice time to just be chatting with friends and really figuring out, when are you the happiest? And I think for me, it's being really directly connected with people and doing something on a smaller scale.
I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, the more people can be in touch with whatever brings them true happiness, and I think this goes for everything, but it's certainly applicable here, is when the more granular you can get with what actually brings you that happiness, right? Like you said, you're very clear on what that is. I don't know that a lot of people have that clarity.
And I started writing notes in my phone whenever I was feeling happy or unhappy. I started, I don't sort of journal, but it was almost like that. It was like, oh, conflict makes me unhappy. And it's like, you can't avoid conflict forever. But in an agency world, there's a lot of, it's not aggressive conflict, but there's a lot of decision making and a lot of choices and a lot of persuasion and a lot of kind of getting close to the edge of conflict and then getting around it. And I think I was in that situation a lot. And it was like, I don't love that. I don't thrive in conflict. I'm a very collaborative person, I think, by nature, or I would like to think that I am. I love the idea of just sitting around a table and working stuff out. That idea of people not saying what they really think or not really understanding what the rules of the game are, that can be really like stressful. I think I was in that situation a lot and it was like, oh, this isn't going to change, I don't think, because doing so well and the stakes are higher and higher and the pressure was getting sort of higher. And I realized maybe I don't do as well under pressure as I think. Yeah.
Being honest with yourself before you can be externally honest, right? Like knowing what you don't like is just as important as knowing what you do, and knowing your limitations so that you can focus on the things that you do love and that can move the needle, right?
Yeah. And I worked with a designer at Daughter who gave me some really good feedback once. I asked a few people who I'd worked with for a long time what I was good at and what I could improve. And he was like, you have a lot of energy. And when it's positive, that is amazing. And when it's negative, that is terrible. And he's like, you can bring in like I can sort of come into a room and like bring this level of, I don't know, not anxiety, but just kind of this level of up, up, up. And that's not always helpful. Sometimes you want the person who does this. And I wasn't very good at doing that. And it was like, oh yeah, I like to come in kind of guns blazing. And that's not always the best energy to bring to a situation. And I was kind of doing it because I was at this like highly strung kind of level all the time. It's like, oh, maybe sometimes it's better when I'm just like chill, and I need to put myself in situations where I can like be that person more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like that? Do you like that change? Does that feel natural to you?
It does. I feel like, this is weird, but I feel like, and maybe that's not happening now, but I feel like I speak more slowly than I used to. I used to kind of have this just like high clip all the time. And I felt like I was always running late for things. And I was always like, where do I have to be next? And that overscheduled yeah. I don't think it let me bring out the things that I'm the best at. I think those things are sitting around and letting things come a bit more naturally, like getting into the flow a little bit more. I have never been much of a chill person, and I'm trying to like be that a little bit more.
You mentioned something earlier, which I found really fascinating. And you said when you were at BBDO, you didn't feel like you didn't identify as creative. Has that changed?
Yeah. I think if I had my career over, I think I would do it a little differently. I meet a lot of people now who talk about wanting to get into agencies, and a lot of them don't know whether they want to be in account services or creative. And I find that so interesting because I always thought those were, miles apart, and they're actually not. Creativity comes in so many different forms. I'm never going to be visually super creative, but I have like a lot of ideas. A lot of them are bad. But I think that idea of it's okay to kind of be outside your lane a little bit. You don't have to, careers are not as sort of regimented as they used to be. And I think being a generalist is interesting, and you shouldn't pigeonhole yourself like that. Saying I'm not very creative is actually not it's not very helpful.
I do find that more common these days than not. Like people that are working in creative fields obviously are very creative and still are saying, oh, like I'm doing it by the book or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of downplaying your strengths a little bit. I don't know. I've always had an issue with like overconfidence. And I think to my detriment, maybe I've sort of really pulled back on never wanting to say, oh, I'm quite good at this. It's like, it feels so weird to do that. New Zealand has a thing they call tall poppy syndrome, where it's like, if you get too big, someone's going to come and like cut you back down to size. And I think that's not a very healthy sort of psychological attitude. It's okay to be good at things, or to say, I am kind of creative.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
in my own way.
Yeah. That's the honesty thing coming back out, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Do what makes you happy. If you're good at it, great. If you're not, someone's going to tell you at some point. Don't narrow your own field as much.
You are now the founder of Nice One.
Yes.
It's incredible what you're doing. And I find it really interesting, the positioning that you found for yourself, right? Which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're positioned as, the brands that aren't quite ready for an agency. How did you identify that opportunity, like that market segment? Is anybody else owning that space?
I think there's lots of really good freelancers in Calgary, and I don't know whether enough clients know that they exist. At Daughter, when we were first getting started, we worked on a lot of smaller pieces of business, and we worked directly with founders, really kind of helping them articulate their identity, but also solve some business problems. And I love that side of it. I love that people who have an idea and who don't even know the right team to bring in around them. As Daughter got bigger, those weren't the right clients necessarily for us to take on. So when people like that came to us, normally through my channel as the sort of business development person, we would farm them out to other agencies in town, or we'd say, hey, this probably isn't a great fit for us, but here's 7 people you should talk to. And suddenly I was like, oh, I want to be one of those people. It's like, I loved that side of it. I want to sit down with people and kind of talk to them about, what are your business goals? What do you need now? And maybe you don't need $100,000 project. Maybe you need like a $2,000 project just to get you going and get some market validation. And I think there are so many great freelancers out there looking for work who just aren't as connected in the business community. And it's like there's these parallel paths of people running out there who should know each other. So it's like, I start sort of meeting clients and going, oh, I think you'd be perfect to work with this designer or this writer or this strategist. And I just want to make those paths cross more. That's always been one of my sort of business idols in Calgary was Jim Button. He was founder of Village Brewery and worked at Evans Hunt for a long time. And he was such a great connector of people. He wasn't doing the work himself. He was just bringing the right people into the right rooms and then kind of letting them get on with it. And I love that idea. Like, I want to sort of be a connector of people. I think there are people out there doing it. I don't know whether Calgary gets a lot of credit for that. I've also thought a little bit about like creative recruitment, helping creatives find, part-time jobs in agencies, understanding the personalities of different agencies in town and where a creative would fit, like where their personality might gel the most. So I think that sort of thing is really interesting. Just this idea of this community of people out there who aren't going to cross paths is kind of devastating to me emotionally.
Yeah.
I want to try and push the paths together.
Like, there's more than enough work to go around, right? And there's so much talent and it's incredible. Do you think that that's the way that business is going? Because you've seen it from an agency perspective, now you're seeing it from a freelance perspective and everything in between. Is that the way that things are going, or is it just kind of two separate worlds right now? What does that look like?
I think for big businesses, agencies will always be important. I think even with the rise of AI, I think strategy and expertise and having people who've solved those problems before is so important for those big clients. And I've always sort of said, like, I am daughter's number one cheerleader. If anyone comes to me and it's like, you are too big for me, but you should talk to daughter. Like, I kind of know what clients are a great fit for daughter as well. And I will always sort of refer people on. I do think that there's that model of kind of dip your toe in the water a little bit. And a lot of founders don't have the budgets to really go for that big agency model. And that's fine. Agencies can't spend a lot of time on, things that don't make sense commercially. Everyone deserves to have somebody in their corner and somebody giving that objective insight. And I think I want to do that on that small scale. The agency model is not broken. I think the agency model is getting more and more strategic and more sort of honed into where it really counts. But I think that entrepreneur, solopreneur sort of model of just connecting a bunch of individuals is valid as well.
We were having a conversation off camera right before this about the idea of like replacing the word freelance with founder.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
I know a ton of people who call themselves a freelancer. And when I left daughter and decided I was going to start my own thing, I was like, what do I call myself? And I called myself founder, and I felt a little bit weird about it. But then I was thinking about it, and all of these people who are freelancers are founders. They're founders of their own business. Like, they're running their own businesses. I think entrepreneur and founder and things like that can have this negative connotation of this kind of egomaniacal sort of side. And I think people should like give themselves some grace. It's like you're working on taxes and finances and structures and you're doing it alone. And that's really admirable. You are the founder of your own business, whether it ever gets bigger than one or whether it stays as one. I think that's a title that is earned, and people who run their own business earn it every day.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of people, they don't identify that way. And, that's not something that comes top of mind for them to explain themselves as that way. But realistically, when you are a freelancer, you're taking on all the hats. You're doing everything that you would be doing otherwise, right? So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Even if you have like a full-time or a part-time job and you're doing stuff on the side, that stuff that you're choosing on the side, you're making decisions about whether it's financially right, creatively right, whether the timing is right for you, how you manage that workload. You're basically doing the work of running a business, and that can scale into a larger thing, or it can stay as one person. But yeah, you are a business person.
Could you have ever anticipated when you were growing up in New Zealand or when you were going to law school or whatever the case may, working in the agency world, did you anticipate that at one point in your life you might be a founder, you might go this route, or no?
Never. I sort of fell into it fairly accidentally. After coming back from a mat leave at another agency, the agency was doing less well than they had been, and they didn't have the capacity to take me back on. And that was when I joined Daughter. Stephanie and Jonathan had already founded the agency at that point. They were a few months into it. And I joined, and I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But because there were already two people there, I felt like it was sort of baby entrepreneurship. It was like, these people already have a little bit of a structure going. They have some clients, they have a bit of a process. I can come in and kind of help optimize and make it efficient and then scale it. And that was really interesting. So to be honest, there were times when I was in EO where I was like, I don't really feel like an entrepreneur because I don't feel like I was there from the outset. So to be there from the outset of Nice One feels really the next kind of step. I've sort of gone from bigger agencies to smaller and smaller and smaller, and now to one.
Yeah.
It's like, these are my decisions, and the impact of what I'm doing it's on me. And I kind of like that accountability. It's almost like a test. Can I do it? Can I like do something that is on a smaller scale, but works psychologically and emotionally for me, but also financially long-term as well?
And I think that wealth of experience that you've gathered along all these, these different these different agencies leads you to know the ins and outs of different scales, different sizes of businesses that you can work with, and your skill set and what you're good at too, right?
Yeah, I'd say that. And my husband, who owns a brewery now, he's really big on our kids being entrepreneurs and running their own businesses. I'm actually pretty big on learn on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
I think starting at BBDO was amazing. I started in an agency that was very structured. Like, I really knew my role very well. I worked with incredibly talented people who were at the top of their game. I had big budgets. I had, big opportunities. I never would have had that if I'd gone straight into it out of school myself. So I think learning that, being in those rooms where it's like, these are multi-million-dollar decisions that are being made, and being okay with that, I think it's great. And exposing yourself to that, whether it's as a part-time job while you're studying, I do think being an employee is incredibly important.
There's so many people that are thinking about starting something, right? Maybe they've been in corporate, maybe they're young and thinking about starting a business or even a side hustle, whatever the case may be. There's so many people that are thinking about that and just don't necessarily know what the first step is or know what the skill sets are that they have or maybe need to gather before starting. Is there anything top of mind for you that is like, this is something I learned from the past and it's directly correlated to, my success in the future as being a founder?
When we first started at Daughter, we were at a place called The Commons, which is in Inglewood. It's a co-working space. And we used to have this thing called Sunday sessions. And there was somebody who came in to do a talk on one of the Sundays. And they did this exercise where it was write down your perfect day. And it was like, where do you wake up? Who's with you? What do you have for breakfast? How do you get to work? What is work? And I did this whole exercise. I think I wrote like 4 or 5 pages about what my perfect day looked like and felt like. And it was so helpful just to go, oh, if this is what I want, what's going to get me there? Is it working for myself or is it working for somebody else? What do I need in my life? What makes me happy? Do I want to go into an office and be surrounded with that bustle and be downtown and be, walking the plus 15s with a coffee? Is that what makes me happy? And for some people that is, and that changes as well. But I think really looking at your life as a whole, like, what are you wearing to work? Like, are you taking the train? Are you riding a bike? Are you driving a car? All those sorts of things. When people talk to me about working in advertising or design, they're like, what does your day look like? And it's like, my day is a whole lot of meetings. It's like, if you don't like that, this is probably not the job for you. So understanding how you'll be spending your time, and people think that having your own business is great because you get to make all these decisions and make all this money. It's like, it's also incredibly stressful. And that might not be something that you like. For a long time, I thought just being an employee, taking my salary, being able to switch off in the weekend is great. I didn't do that as an employee, which was on me. But there's no harm in doing that sometimes, like that live to work, work to live sort of mentality. They're really taking a good hard look at the holistic side of your life. Like, what does that feel like and how does work play into that?
I love that. I've never heard of this, design your perfect day and work towards it. I mean, there's this concept, obviously, of like knowing what you want and then reverse engineering how to get there, obviously. But actually having this core idea of exactly what that looks like and then doing that, I love that.
Yeah. And then more recently, I've been looking at this thing called FIRE, which is Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it's like figuring out what your FIRE number is and what you need to like sustain your life. And money is important. Like money buys a lot of opportunities to do things that make you happy. So that idea of, how much money do I need? It's like, I've worked out I don't need anywhere near as much money as I thought because I live a fairly, not frugal, but I'm not super extravagant. Like I don't buy expensive clothes. I don't drive an expensive car. I spend my money on experiences, on travel, on eating out, things like that. That's what I love to do the most. And you don't actually need as much money as you think for that. Like I like to stay in hostels and things like that. So I don't know, figuring out the money that you need and then what's going to get you there in a way that, you know, it keeps you sane is really helpful.
Yeah, I love that fire. I thought too. Where is that? Is there a resource for that? Is there a book about it?
There's so many podcasts about it. So I'm reading. My husband. I've never been financially as savvy as I should be, and I'm getting better at the moment. But The Simple Path to Wealth is what I'm reading at the moment, which was a book based on a guy who wrote this, basically a series of letters to his daughter on how to manage her finances. And he was like, if I can teach you nothing else, I can teach you this. And then that sort of led me down this path of this FIRE number, this financial independence, retire early. And for some people, early is 60, and for some people it's 40. And for me, I'm hoping it's going to be like 55. So this kind of idea of easing into this, you know, what do I need to make that work long term? If we're going to live till we're 80 or so, you know, how do I make sure that I'm set up and that my family's set up for success as well? It can feel a little mercenary to like think about it in terms of money, but it is important and it does buy you the freedom to make choices.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I think you know, in the past, the financial conversation or the money conversation has been kind of taboo. Like you don't want to talk about it, but I think that's changing, and as it should. Yeah. So, yeah, totally.
Yeah, you should never be afraid to, I mean, not necessarily ask people how much money they make, but like different financial strategies, looking at different ways to budget. We just started using a thing called Monarch, which I think is really interesting. You basically hook all your bank accounts into it and it helps you budget. It's like a microscope on your spending, because I'm like, I don't spend much. And then it's oh, all the little things.
It's giving you data. You're like, no, it's
cool.
not true.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
What does success look like to you? And has that changed over the years?
It has changed a lot. I think success is, for me now, is just being really comfortable with myself as a person, being able to spend time alone with myself and be happy, not being dependent on external validation as much. I think I grew up in a household where I was a good student in a single parent household. My mother didn't have a lot of time, so she was like, gold star when you do well at school, like this is going to be your path. So I was very much focused on other people telling me that I was doing a good job. I think success now is feeling like I'm doing a good job without anybody having to tell me that, like not needing to fish for compliments or need a gold star or a pat on the head when I've done a good job, just being okay with myself.
I think it's important to know that you're on track from other people, but realistically being aware of that yourself is the most important.
Yeah. And I think I've seen people who from the outside you think are so successful, and then they can be deeply unhappy as well. And it's really, the more people you meet in your life, the more you understand, you know, you just really got to understand what makes you happy. And so you get this one chance. It's like, live your wild, beautiful life.
What's next for you? Obviously, nice one you've started, and you're steamrolling with that. But what's coming down the pipeline?
Figuring out what nice one is. I think people keep asking me for like a list of services. It's like, I don't really know. What am I good at? Like I've done this account service role for such a long time, which is a little bit of everything. I recently did some content writing for a client, and I really enjoyed it. Sort of taking strategy and brand essence and sort of design mentality and then funneling that into long copy, I found really interesting. Never something that I thought I'd be doing, like being a writer. But I think it's finding other people who I want to work with. I think it's connecting good people to good clients, doing good work. I really would like to work with AU Arts a little bit more. Things like Cabin. Cabin does so many beers. It's like getting students to do that sort of stuff, giving them something for their portfolio, giving them a chance to understand how that process works. So it's sort of being generous with my time and being flexible with what those services are. It's like, maybe I can do that. Like finding a client who trusts that I can do it and doing it. And if I don't do a good job, fixing it and getting an expert, but letting that creativity flow a little bit more.
Who is the perfect client for you? I'm sure, like, you know, if you were to define the ICP, what would that look like?
I really love products that are tangible. My early career in advertising was all about services, so service businesses. And then at Daughter, I did a lot of work on products, and I love products. I love that idea of shelf appeal, of the whole don't judge a book by its cover, I think is just rubbish, because it's like you totally should judge a book by its cover, and it's literally what publishers do. So helping people who have a product idea, developing systems for things like that. Products are really interesting. Not as big in Calgary. There's not as many product clients, so it's a pretty narrow market. But even people who are having an experience as well. So things like restaurants, hospitality. I love that sort of industry. The generosity that's involved in that sort of industry, I think is something that I'd love to work on more.
Where can we send people to follow along what's coming up?
So niceone.ca is my website. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And hopefully I will be doing a little bit more content on Instagram as well. Content creation is a whole new sort of skill set that I'm learning too, which is when you have your own business and it's just you need to promote that business. So Instagram, LinkedIn, and the website.
Well, Jill, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for today and today's conversation.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Cheers.